At 9 years old, the very first game I was smitten with was Pokemon. Many other kids can relate to that feeling of embarking on a journey and having a purpose for your life mapped out in pixels. The colors, stories, and characters wrapped me into their world, and I would get thrown back into reality after connecting with my fictional companions. Each character touched my heart in a special way, and I got into the Pokemon manga just to understand them better. Another one of my absolute favorite games is Kingdom Hearts. You see, the Kingdom Hearts story is quite complicated, but I realized just this year that it was screaming a message to me that said, you deserve to be your own person. According to Rachel Samuel, for children especially, identity formation is an important aspect of social development. More than just one sense of self, they, children, also learn about and understand their place in society, fostering a sense of belonging and acceptance in their community. At first, this is true for me, but over time, the games that began releasing didn't hold my growing vision and values of the world. There were certain games that required me to make decisions that weren't aligned with my beliefs. For example, in the beginning of one game, to move on to the next level, you had to commit suicide. I was confident that I'd be able to handle the mature content of the game, mainly because I'd been excited to buy it for 4 years, and secondly, because I'd had experience dealing with mental health challenges in my friends' lives. But I wasn't expecting myself to have the visceral response I did after seeing that scene. Prior to the game's release, I'd experienced thoughts related to death and suicide myself, though I knew I wouldn't attempt to take my life. Thankfully, I was able to steadily get out of my thought pattern with the help of my friends, family, and God. But 2 years later, when I had to make the decision to take my life in the game, it really shook me, because it didn't give you any other choice but to do so. I sat there on my bed shaking and praying because I couldn't believe what I had just done. You see, the games that I was playing as a child began to make me feel disconnected from my growing beliefs, identity, experiences, and resolutions. Not all of them garnered the same response in me like that one did last year, but it's because of this disconnect I almost fell out of love with video games. That is, until I realized that I can be the change I want to see. I can create games and worlds that are representative of who I am and who I hope to become. And I wanted the same thing for other gamers alike, which meant that I had to make the shoes that I wanted to see filled. So, at 10 years old, I took up the task of making those worlds come to life myself. To become the explorer of all things eclectic, to weave the many branching interests that I had with the common thread of creativity and expansion. To become a video game developer. When I first started going to hackathons, I was always the youngest in the room. My mother had to convince the organizers to let me participate, which thankfully they did almost every time. I now have a lot of experience with computer science due to these groups letting me into their spaces. They welcomed my ideas and short life experience to the table and encouraged me to keep creating the worlds that mattered to me. If it weren't for my mother advocating for me, I wouldn't have the wealth of knowledge I do today to be able to create the things I have. Yes, I could have learned the skills I needed on my own, but my ideas, experiences, perspective, and worldview wouldn't have entered into the world of game development the way they have. This is why it's necessary to be intentional in bringing in diverse developers, because the games made should be more inclusive and reflective of their users, so that the things that matter to users can be felt on a deeper level, and the gaming industry keeps and attracts players of various backgrounds. The same reason I started creating games is exactly why we need you. You are the missing link to the chain and change that the gaming industry is creating. We need you so that this community of gamers can expand and reach those who don't have a voice. Your past, your present, and your future are all a part of you to push, pull, and create from. Some might say, but games are just for entertainment, so what does it matter? Well, psychologist Natila McGee puts it this way. Yes, we enjoy them, games, but also what can be learned. If we're thinking about how it impacts mental health, how we behave, how we perceive things, how we're consuming something, games can even change what we're desensitized to. Even the super popular games are changing and shaping how we think, feel, and behave towards other people too. The idea that games allow you to reset over and over again so you can make new decisions and learn from old ones is revolutionary for teaching purposes. In these virtual worlds, you're allowed to fix a mistake in ways you never can in real life. Think of the real-world applications this can have. Already many fields are using simulators or VR for training, such as NASA, policing, and PTSD therapy with veterans. But imagine if games were widely used for learning anything. The games I've been creating are centered around learning through video games. One game I helped create with my sister and our friend Jonathan Sherrill is called A Walk in My Shoes. It's a game about choices, empathy, representation, confronting bias, and real-life experiences. It's a game inspired by the death of George Floyd. In order to get a better understanding of why certain issues matter to groups that aren't your own, you have to step into their shoes. You have to fight back whatever preconceptions you have about them and listen. But with games, it has a layer to conversation that you can't experience in real life, which is experiencing the issues these groups face, at least a little bit. The reason games are such an effective medium for change is just because of how immersive and interactive they are. As Jamie Madigan of Psychology Today put it, for a game to meet these criteria means that it has good spatial presence and a rich environment for the player to engage with. A rich environment usually includes several channels of sensory information, continuity of that information, cognitively demanding environments, and a strong and interesting narrative. The more real a game feels, the more affected the player is, and the stronger connection they have to its material. You being a part of the gaming industry means that the reach of the things that matter to you can be felt on a deeper level for people. It doesn't have to be as upfront as my team's game was. It can be the subtle wording of a sentence that ends up resonating with your player. It can help propel this world's future, both for those who want to create games and consume the content. Orson Swett Martin once said, "We make the world we live in and shape our own environment." Just like growing old with one's partner, I'm not the exact same person I was when I first started playing Pokemon Red. Because change happens to this world and to us, the spaces and things we love have to change with us. That's why I'm imploring you to take a step into the worlds you love, take a look around and see what's missing, because you can change it. I challenge you to make, mold, and meld new frontiers, to create worlds. Because games should be more reflective of their users and their users' experiences. This is a journey all of us have to realize that we can take. If you'd like some resources on where to get started in the process to entering the gaming industry, here are some helpful links. But before you dive into this world and start your new mission, I have one last thing to say that I learned from The Legend of Zelda. It's dangerous to go alone, so take this. The gaming industry has the opportunity not just to entertain the world, but to change it. And you can be the change, and you won't lose if you do.